Well, welcome to this session of the Cloud Exchange. My guest is Cordell Schachter, the Chief Information Officer at the Transportation Department. Cordell, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jason.
Let me start at the beginning. I think it's been quite a while since I've caught up with the DOT CIO. So where are you today with your cloud strategy? What's it look like? How are you using cloud and cloud services?
Well, we embraced the cloud some years ago when we centralized computing and IT services, creating a common operating environment here at DOT before my time. And most of the systems, the common systems, were consolidated into that environment. And we do it for two reasons, like most other federal organizations. One, for scalability. We have a greater potential for providing high quality services from a common operating environment, replicating our services in various ways, and to increase our security profile, and to provide to be able to purchase from cloud providers enhanced services around cybersecurity that would be difficult for us to provide for ourselves at scale, or if not difficult, would come at a lot of additional cost.
You hit upon the two big things: higher, better services and better cybersecurity. You didn't hit upon, which was good to hear, lower costs necessarily. So maybe we'll get there or we won't. Let me start with that higher quality of services, because when we talk about the common operating environment, are these a lot of the back office systems? Are these like, the HR, the IT, the help desk, or what are you talking about when you talk about those common kind of operating environment services?
So the answer is yes. It encompasses both our front office as well as back office environments. And it's probably not a one size that fits all. And I see DOT still having some secure centers of computing that aren't in the cloud. But I think as a strategy, it's still something that makes sense for us.
I was going to ask as well about that hybrid approach. I imagine, like in most agencies, you're going to be kind of foot in both worlds, and obviously multi-cloud. When you got to DOT, and I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it's been probably 2.5 years. Were you surprised by where you were in the cloud, and how have you kind of progressed from when you got there, where in terms of how DOT looks today?
So it's only been 19 months. Maybe to some people it feels like 2.5 years, but it's such a large enterprise here, and we're a federated government within a federated government, so that we have operating administrations or modes with very specific missions that are quite different from each other, and they have different needs in their a particular area of expertise, in most cases doing some sort of oversight, possibly enforcement, and bring with them a suite of legacy applications, some of which have been migrated to the cloud, some that are on our portfolio to be migrated in the future. We've had probably the greatest accomplishment in the areas of common systems, such as email, cloud storage, authentication, and various cybersecurity tools that we're able to deploy at scale across the enterprise.
I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for CIOs like yourself in these large agencies, that the mission at FAA, of course, is much different than the mission at other places like National Transportation Security Administration, and different than National Safety Transportation Board. So there's a lot of pieces and parts that are moving. Where are you heading, as you look to the future when it comes to cloud services? Do you still have a certain percentage of workloads you'd like to see put in the cloud over the next 6 or 9 or 12 months?
I think that's more on the how side. We're still focusing on the what. And our top priority here is cybersecurity. So that we need to move in always cybersecure manners. All new systems have to be built resiliently secure by design. And we're trying to migrate and modernize as much as possible from a legacy perspective, up to the extent of our resources, both staff, business partners, and budgets will allow, to improve the security profile of those applications as we modernize them. So that's what we're going after. Our second priority here is around our workforce, both to recruit the best and the brightest, but also to retain them through constant professional development training, have them take advantage of opportunities within the department. And our third priority is to do things in a best practice and modern way. So we need to develop a greater project management practice, application development, oversight, as well as actually developing applications and do those on modern, in most cases, cloud-based secure platforms.
Let's jump into some of those priorities, because obviously you mentioned cybersecurity a couple of times. And I always know there's some sensitivities around cybersecurity, so maybe there's some things you'll just keep at a high level. But when you talk about secure by design, how big of a culture change is that for transportation? How have you been able to kind of convince is not the right word, but kind of push folks in the right direction to say, hey, we just can't buy this and assume it's secure. We have to ensure that as we've designed the entire system, that security is here it comes. I know you're waiting for it, built in, not bolted on. We've all heard that too many times.
Yeah. So I think there really doesn't need to be convincing in terms of the aspiration. No one will argue anymore that this doesn't have to be a consideration. But there is a cultural change that needs to happen in terms of how it's done. And the how means it's going to, if you have a fixed budget for a particular program or project, cybersecurity is going to consume a larger portion of that budget than you might have estimated to begin with. So we certainly need to confirm our estimates to make sure that cyber is giving the proper allocation. The second is you're going to need expertise, either full-time on that team or consulting with the team, because cybersecurity isn't about just standing up a particular tool, but it's the three elements, the people, process, as well as the technical tools that are going to get you to that secure or cyber secure place that we all need to be. So I think it's a recognition that it's hard work. The sayings about it, whether it's built in, bolted on, secure by design, zero trust, they all are disarmingly simple, but very complicated and difficult to implement in practice.
I think convince was not maybe the best choice of words. That's obviously the one that came to mind. But you're right. The culture change we talk a lot about when it comes to technology, security is probably one of the bigger things. Are you starting to kind of work through that to find that right balance between making sure cyber is properly funded, resourced, however people, process, and technology, as well as, okay, we got to keep the trains running, we got to keep the systems working. How do you find that right balance as the CIO?
So as like another saying, don't let the little that you can do stop you from doing the little that you can do. So we literally have a meeting on cybersecurity every single day with representatives from across the enterprise. Every single operating administration is represented. And we have different agendas for different days of the week, where we may on one day review the latest DHS CISA Sci-High vulnerability report and scan. Another day we may review a website scan of vulnerabilities, and each of the operating administrations for their systems take away a list of tasks that we're constantly updating and working on together. And then during periods of high vulnerability, like last year during the Log4j initiative, we not just meet every day, but multiple times a day, weekends, holidays, to keep the momentum going. And the good news is the IT community within DOT is absolutely committed to cybersecurity. People come to the calls in greater numbers than we estimated at first. So that momentum that we created initially with the Log4j response continues to this day. And we have not only individual technical staff, but even leaders within those operating administrations joining us for topics that concern them.
That shows that culture change that you and I were just briefly talking about is really happening. Do you get a sense that it's just a recognition that's how important cybersecurity is? Or not just that, it's also recognition that as we've all worked from out of the office, if we worked remotely and enjoyed those changes that happened over the last few years, with the pandemic, post-pandemic, that they understand that they have to, that how important technology is, meaning we always knew it, but now I always heard from CIOs that a lot of people recognize they can't live without it, right? Before it was just, oh, I have my phone or I have my laptop. But do you think, what do you think it is? Or it's a little bit of everything?
So it probably is a little bit of everything. One thing that I find unique here at DOT is that a lot of the executives in the department are former operators. So they're people who are used to running things. They tend to be very well informed, hands-on, and have done before what they're asking their state and local, tribal, territorial stakeholders to do. So I'm someone also who likes to lead by example, and I like to think that my presence on these conferences nearly every day sets a tone for other leaders within those operating administrations and even within our own Office of the CIO organization, that this is something that is so important that each of us needs to participate in person, doing what we can do to help the overall effort. In the example of a leader or executive, there's so many things that are crying out to be priorities. And if everything's a priority, then nothing really is. So we have to take responsibility for making those strategic decisions and then reacting to those things that we didn't necessarily plan for, but arrive at our place and need to be dealt with sometimes urgently.
I'm going to swing us back around to the discussion around cloud a little bit too, cloud within security. You just said we got to make it a priority to kind of make some of those strategic decisions. When it comes to cloud and cybersecurity and take advantage of some of those secure cloud platforms, can you maybe just talk at a high level a little bit about how you all are doing that, how you decide, okay, how the cloud has offered you all more security, better security, different security that maybe you couldn't have done on your own, or maybe an example or two that would stand out to you without obviously giving away too many sensitivities?
Well, without recognizing or endorsing one particular vendor over another, one thing is we want to be in multiple clouds because we definitely want to know that when we're either entering or renewing a contract with one company or reseller or another, that we're truly getting best value for the taxpayer. On kind of the raw dollars that are being spent, these are significant investments for information technology and information technology services. We think they're important. We think that in the past, where the Army may have run on its bellies, modern organizations run on their IT. So we take that very seriously and want to make sure that we're making very wise investments. Within those cloud enterprises, they offer services, sometimes services that compete with third-party sellers in the area of cybersecurity. And we want to find the right mix. What services are available within that cloud that are enabled more easily once you're within that environment? And then what other especially cybersecurity services, do you also want to add to the mix so you're not both entirely dependent on one provider or even one technique to keep your enterprise resilient? So in the old days, we would say might subscribe to two different antivirus providers because the virus signatures weren't the same. And now we've kind of evolved to a point where most of that antivirus is predictive and algorithmic in nature, but yet there are still various different types of techniques and secret sauce out there for detecting the activities of threat actors. And we want to have the broadest spectrum of tools and scanning and, frankly, services that interrupt those attacks as they launch in place. So we need to keep a very careful eye on the marketplace and take advantage of I'm going to say, a portfolio of services without buying so much that we can't become expert on what we are using.
I always enjoy when our friends in industry complain that there are too many tools, or agencies say there are too many tools. And I always like to point back to them, well, isn't that your fault too? And many times I go, yes, it is. Yes, mea culpa, I'll take that on too. So it's a understanding that there's you mentioned that right balance is really hard to strike sometimes. And again, have you come in and decided, hey, certain tools we don't need anymore because we can do that in the cloud, and certain tools we do need, or we need different tools or turn on different capabilities because we don't want to do that in the cloud or can't? Have you had to make some of those decisions over the last 19 months?
Yeah, it's I'll take responsibility for a decision that we make, but the process in where we arrive at that is a collaborative process within the technical experts that we have on staff, that we have as business partners, and then very often what the competitions for our business yield. So I don't think any of us is as smart as all of us. And I think I've done my best work listening to other people and coming to and benefiting from the consensus that's derived from that group, and whether that's a particular project team or it could be representation from across our CIO organization.
We can talk a lot more about security. I could ask you all kinds of questions about zero trust and CDM and all the three-letter words. But let me shift us back to the broader conversation about cloud a little bit too. One of the things when we talk about strategy, it's that use of, a lot of agencies first went down the path of infrastructure as a service. Then they started to migrate to platform. Now I'm hearing a lot of CIOs talk about software as a service. Can you discuss maybe a little bit about your environment today? And I know you're really focused not necessarily on a specific type of cloud, but are you using more software today than you were previously? Are you still heading toward that where we want to use more SaaS products? Or how's that mix look?
So I'm going to give you a similar answer as I did before. I think you need a portfolio of all of those things. One, to make sure you're getting best value. And in some cases, that best value may be a software as a service solution. In another case, it may be platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. So I think we want to be able to have the opportunity to take advantage of each of those ways of delivering cloud services where it's appropriate and best value. And we also want to have both on staff and as business partners, the people who can take best advantage of those, because I don't think any one of them is necessarily superior to the other. Platform as a service or infrastructure as a service has its place, so does software as a service. And in some cases, you can only buy certain services in a SaaS solution. So I think those are the things that you put together in making your decision.
I guess I'll just kind of bring it back around on the portfolio approach. When you look at your portfolio, do you feel like, we would like more of one over the other? Or like anything else, it just depends so much on what you're trying to do, what mission you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I really both caution our clients and our own people not to get too enamored of the tech for its own sake, and let the requirements take us where we need to be.
And I think that's what again, when I talk about trends within the CIO community, I hear a lot of CIOs talk about very similarly to what you're saying, which is what's the business outcome we're trying to achieve? And if that business outcome needs software as a service, then it's great. But if it's better on infrastructure or platform or in our own data center, that works too. Are those the conversations you're having more regularly with the business side about, okay, what are you trying to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
and let us help you get there.
Yes, and there's, even in an organization as large as ours, we try to more or less pilot a sailing ship than a speedboat that can make constant turns. We want to chart a course. We want to partner with vendors over multiple years, because it takes a while to learn the new systems and their tooling, and then to get good at them, and then have them integrated within the enterprise. So it may be surprising how few decisions we make of that kind. And what we'd rather do is go deep with those solutions, which is why we need to be very careful when we do them.
Cordell, we're getting up towards a break before we jump out. Let me just go back to something you said just a little while ago, which is this idea of best value. Generally speaking, have you found that as the modernization efforts have occurred, you're hitting that best value piece? Not that you're spending too much or too little, but the cloud is delivering more of that best value than maybe it did. Again, I know you've only been here 9 months. Than in other places you've been at your career, it's a better understanding of how to achieve that best value. Maybe that's the better question I should ask, versus whether or not you are or aren't.
Well, something I think you alluded to earlier, Jason, was that, are you getting anything cheaper? And the answer is no. If I was only focused on cost, I would probably stay in a premise environment. The other side of the coin is I would be missing other things that come with that cloud subscription. So it's never going to be an apples to apples comparison. And then even what I may have recognized as a green dollar cost in a premise environment, say, didn't include electric and air conditioning. And that cost has to be bundled in what I pay to a cloud provider. So right off the bat, it's going to look like it's a little more expensive. So I think those apples to apples and dollar to dollar comparisons are very difficult. I think going back to the beginning of our conversation, the cloud brings with it certain things that I would not be able to buy if I was in a premise environment. I can come much closer to anytime, anywhere computing, and be resilient, especially as the workforce is at least partially remote, that if I have a power failure or a data center outage in this particular geography, I could continue operating in another geography and potentially even serve some of the people who were directly affected by that first outage. I can't do that from a single or even double premise environment. As we also discussed earlier, there's security tools involved in that environment at a scale that the major cloud providers are able to achieve, that even a federal department as large as DOT would never get to that scale. So we get protection. So I think it's the right move, and I think the federal government had a bunch of good ideas. And coming from a local operator, as the CTO and CIO of New York City's Department of Transportation previous to this position, I think the cloud strategy was very prescient and a good idea, as well as some of the CIO and authorities and IT priorities contained in FITARA and FISMA, which I would not have had or did not have as in a similar position in New York City.
I'm glad you brought up this better understanding. It's years ago, it was cloud first, and we kind of, I think as an organization, government realized, okay, cloud first, but not always. And then things kind of moved, as you know, now we're under cloud smart. And I'm sure there's a third one that will be cloud something or other in the future. But on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from a partner in the industry, and then we're going to come back, and you and I will continue our conversation. So you're watching the Cloud Exchange on Federal News Network. My guest is Cordell Schachter, the Chief Information Officer at the Transportation Department. We'll be back for part 2 of our conversation after the industry perspective.